No, they're just
We just went tuck shopping yesterday. We ended up, Ryan wanted, last year people were playing gray, and he went with a friend of prom and a friend of all.
All right, good evening, folks. We're gonna get started. A little bit unique tonight. Welcome everybody. It's a unique evening. My 6-year superintendent, my first public hearing for the renaming of a facility. So thank you for being here tonight. I'm guessing Tarkowski's. Only because the only 2 people who I don't recognize or don't know from somewhere else, but thank you. So generally, we haven't done this before and it's been a while in Rome. So I will just briefly explain the process. The community has brought forth a petition to rename the press box of the RF Stadium to the Raymond Tarkowski press box. Raymond has been the voice of RFA football and RFA sports for a very long time. 1974, I believe, was the year. So my best to remember that. So by policy of the district, if a petition comes forward to rename a facility, the board accepts the petition. We receive that. We have to have what's called a public forum, which or public hearing, which is what this is. It's just a simple opportunity for the community to come and speak about the possibility of renaming the press box. After tonight, the next action would be a board action by resolution to either approve the renaming of the press box or not approve the renaming of the press box. But the board will not have that conversation in public right now, but this is the public hearing for that. Following the public hearing for the renaming of the press box, we will do the official budget public hearing as well. So for those of you that have been through a few of the budget presentations, I'm looking at this side of the room, and a few people over here, feel free to head over to the restaurant on the corner there and have maybe a soda pop of, Central American descent in honor of Cinco de Mayo. I'll be about 40 minutes. Nope. I think it'll be about 30 minutes on the budget hearing. So that's what we're here for tonight. So at this point in time, we're just going to leave the floor open to anybody that would like to speak regarding the renaming of the press box.
Excuse me, Peter,
Yeah.
can you let Elena in?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I thought I told Elena to go to bed.
I know.
She's asking.
She didn't work very much.
No,
She needs to go to bed. Oh, yeah, she said, someone let me in. Yeah,
She's texting.
I'm sorry.
Please let me in.
She's not on there.
Okay.
She's got to click on the link for the public hearing
Okay.
on the website, not the board meeting. 2 different links. Hey, would anybody on the board like to speak about the press box?
No, I think it's a great idea. Known Ray a long time, does a great job. I think it's
My
a-
only question would be if we do make any changes down the road to the stadium, would we find a way to ensure that the name carried over?
Absolutely.
That was my opinion that we absolutely,
Okay.
hopefully that happens well after my time here. And someone else can have to answer that question and worry about that. But I think it should always carry through. Anytime you do anything like that, that's of significance. You want to try and maintain that honor.
Go ahead.
Do I just stand right here?
Wherever you are comfortable. Well,
We can
if you want to stand that way a little, like the
Sure.
camera's on the top of the TV.
Sure.
There you go.
So I apologize, this is a little long. I wrote it the last couple of days. But this has been something that's very important to me. My father's been a staple of the community, the Rome sports community for the last 50 years. To begin, I wanted to express my gratitude and appreciation to all those who have assisted in getting this petition to the stage. In January, I submitted this proposal to rename the press box at RFA Stadium after my father, Raymond Tarkowski. Along with my proposal, petitions were submitted containing the signatures of approximately 250 Rome residents in support of the proposal. Unfortunately, residing in Syracuse, I was unable to personally obtain these signatures. I was fortunate, however, that several people volunteered to assist. So I want to take this opportunity to publicly recognize and express my sincere thanks to Mark Hinman, Jim Corpella, David Scatia, William Schatz, and Coach Buddy Evans. Additionally, I want to thank my mother, Susan Tarkowski, who's here, for also obtaining signatures and for always supporting my father in his desire to contribute time to sports in Rome. Lastly, I want to thank all the individuals who signed the petition in support of the proposal and to thank the Board of Education for taking this proposal into consideration. 48 years ago, then Rome Free Academy Athletic Director William Coughlin was searching for a public address announcer for RFA football games. He asked my father to fill the role, which he agreed, and in the fall of 1974, he announced his first game at RFA Stadium. This fall, on September 2nd, RFA will host New Hartford in its home opener. And on that day, my father will begin his 49th season serving as the voice of RFA Stadium. My father has served as the PA announcer for 4 coaches, his first year corresponding with Tom Hope's first year as head coach. He has continued in that role under subsequent head coaches Mike Davis and Ted Swavely, and serves for current coach Jake Turcola. My father takes great pride and joy in serving as the public address announcer. His main objective is to remain neutral and to deliver information to the fans in an impartial manner and tone. He spends time preparing for each game, speaking to each coach during pregame warmups to ensure that he has the correct pronunciation of each and every player, because he knows how important that is, especially to the players' families. My father's contributions to RFA football go well beyond the nearly 50 years that he served as the PA announcer. For 20 years, he served as the team's statistician, compiling stats in the press box as he announced RFA's home games or while standing on the team's sideline during road games. He never used a spotter to assist him in recording the statistics, preferring to rely on his own observations. During a game at RFA Stadium, he would simultaneously announce and record each play's result, identifying the ball carrier, the yardage gain or loss, the tackler, and the resulting down and yardage to gain. During those 20 years, he also assisted the Syracuse Post Standard in compiling statistics for teams throughout Section 3. Throughout the beginning of each week during the fall, head coaches from throughout Section 3 would call our house to speak with him so he could record all that team's weekly statistics, which he then relayed to Post Standard sports writer Neil Kerr. In addition to serving as the PA announcer and statistician, my father was one of the founders of the RFA Touchdown Club, the football team's booster club, serving as its president for 15 years. He, along with other members of the Touchdown Club, was instrumental in developing the team's game program, which rivaled and often surpassed the quality of game programs of many Division I college football teams across the country. After the completion of each season, on a day off from his job as an assistant district attorney in Oneida County DA's office, he would drive around the city of Rome, hand delivering plaques to each business or individual who donated money to the program and had an advertisement in that year's annual program. During the summer of 1991, he spent a lot of time, as I recall, viewing archives of the Daily Sentinel contained on microfiche at Jervis Library, dating as far back as 1891, to document and record each game in RFA's history, which was then contained in the Centennial Seasons game program. Beyond football, my father served as the public address announcer for RFA basketball for 15 years for Coach Buddy Evans. When Coach Evans was hired as an assistant coach at Hamilton College, he served as the public address announcer for the Hamilton men's basketball team for 9 seasons. He also served as the public address announcer for Section 3 basketball games at both Hamilton College and Manley Fieldhouse, as well as the Empire State Games, often announcing 5 or 6 consecutive games in one day. For his contributions as a public address announcer of high school sports in Rome, my father was presented with the Rome Sports Hall of Fame Service Award in 1996. In 2013, the RFA football program was dedicated to him for his 40 years of service in the press box and his numerous other contributions to the RFA football program. Additionally, My Hometown Sports named him Your Hometown's 12th Man for his selfless dedication to the students and families of the Rome community. Finally, in 2015, he was inducted into the Rome Sports Hall of Fame for his many contributions to Rome sports. My father has been a constant presence in the RFA press box for the past 49 years. Hearing his voice on Friday nights in and around RFA Stadium is one of the great traditions of the city of Rome. As a result of his distinguished service to sports in Rome, it is fitting and appropriate that he be honored for his dedication and commitment by naming the current press box at RFA Stadium and any potential press box, if a new stadium is built, the Raymond Tarkowski press box. Thank you.
He said it
I
all
spoke
right.
for her.
Not much more to add. He said it, right? All right. Anybody else have anything they would like to say? All right.
Great tribute to your dad, Andrew. Good
Thank
job.
you. Thank you.
You'd be proud.
So the community and folks understand, the next line of business, the board will have a discussion at a later time about that in the press box. There will be a resolution. We move forward and we will obviously be in touch to make sure that, I can't speak for them, but I'd imagine based on the response, I don't see there being an issue with this moving forward. So we'll be in touch to make sure that however we need to honor your father, how we will do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna take a brief 2 minutes for the budget so I can set it up. If you honestly would like to not sit through the next 30 minutes, it's perfectly okay if you've been through it before, so. go
Peter, are
enjoy the
these-
sun. No harm, no foul.
Peter, are these packets the same?
They are not
that's
the
right.
same, but the information is. The budget hearing is condensed quite a bit from the budget presentation.
I just
You are
wonder if these might be
welcome.
more helpful to the candidates than.
Oh, so, I mean, the current, actually,
Do you want yours, Anna?
I'm just gonna walk over to the baseball field.
Joe, do you want your copy of this or can I give it to a candidate?
I've already got it.
This is the upcoming. Yeah. it's-
You have 5 minutes.
No, you like- you don't need yours. Lisa, do you want your copy of this or can I give it to a
No, I
candidate?
have like.
Do you want yours? That's just condensed. Look at that. I think I don't know.
So, my dog.
Yeah, that's my own.
Thank you. Stop it, that's exciting.
We have
Yeah.
4 different
Yay.
rounds. Do you guys want?
I have a
It might help you a little bit more.
Oh, my.
What was that?
I have a whole bunch of-
Oh, you do? It's okay, Patty. This is the one time.
So you allowed this to happen?
I have.
Without a bill?
We've got.
You sure?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have several drafts.
It's a robo.
This is the one time that I like having a
Oh,
paper,
that's
but.
exciting, Chris. That is very exciting. Congratulations. Wow, that's. I hope
I feel
so.
like I know all these.
That's
names.
exciting. How-
All right. See, some people you're too up on the offer.
I just don't feel like moving here.
Well, that's all right.
It's been a day.
For those of you that really enjoy this presentation, the YouTube video will be up tomorrow, so you can watch it over and over again all weekend long. So
That's
let's have a
exciting.
lot of fun.
Okay.
Try to get a daytime Emmy for one of these Sunday. It's all Carl Manganero shoulders. All right, thank you, everybody. Most of you I know are not here for this presentation, but I'll pretend like you are. This is our legal obligation to do a budget hearing for our proposed 22-23 budget as we come up to our election and our vote here in a couple of weeks. If you've been here over the past few weeks, you know that there's no new information in this. This is more or less a quick rundown on for the public on what is the budget, what's in the budget, and kind of how school budgets work. So some basic facts about the district. I don't need to bore you through these things again. Those that are semi-new, the one point on this slide that I highlight every year is the combined wealth ratio. Combined wealth ratio is one of the main drivers in the state education department's foundation aid allotments. 1.00 is average wealth in the state of New York. Rome is at 0.36800. That's slightly lower than last year. We tick down a little bit every year. So each year we're moving a little bit further away from average wealth as determined by the state education department. And essentially what that does for us is it drives up our foundation aid a little bit, not a ton, but that is the #1 marker that's going to kind of help you move forward in the future. Other statistics on here that are relevant: graduation rate of the class of 2021 was at 74% for the district, 76% of students that were at RFA physically, and our regions with advanced destination rate is 20%. Those two figures, no matter what number they are, if they're not 100, we always want them to be higher. Something that's different this go around is this slide here about what is a school budget. So a lot of people are very confused about what school budgets are because they're not. First of all, we're talking about monetary figures that most of us can't relate to in our everyday lives with our personal budgets. And we're also talking about things that are very different in terms of things get board approved. There's different mechanisms within a budget, certain things you can and can't do. So first and foremost, it's important to know that a budget is a cap. It is the maximum amount of money that the school district can spend in any given year. Doesn't mean we have to spend it all, but that's the maximum that we are authorized to spend. First by the Board of Education, who adopts the budget, and second by the community, who voter approves or denies the budget. One of the most important things that we've had to talk about a lot over the years, but not recently, is that budgets are for schools. They are an 18-month prediction. So as we stood in November and December, started developing this, we were trying to predict what was going to be the outcome in August of 2023. So there's about an 18-month span of time you're trying to predict what are you going to need, what might change. A great occurrence would be, or a great example would be in December of 2020, when we were preparing this year's budget. We could have never expected the fuel boom to happen that we are currently experiencing with fuel prices right now. So that's a great example of how everything we talk about is largely a prediction of what we think is going to happen over the next 18 months. We have 4 main revenue sources in Rome: state aid, our local taxes, federal funding, and then what's called your fund balance. That's a fancy word, public word for savings account, and your reserve allocations. School districts and public agencies are allowed to have different reserve accounts. We have a few here. In years past, we've allocated a lot of reserves to cover our costs. This year, we're minimizing that quite a bit. A lot of things in school budgets are fixed costs. I mean, they're contractually obligated expenditures. I would say about 93% of every dollar we spend is a fixed cost expense, meaning it's tied directly to a contract of some kind, whether it be a personnel contract or a community agreement, what have you. Last couple of things: districts they should not spend their entire approved budget in any given year. And any money you don't spend at the end of the year can go back into your reserve allocations. The numbers at the bottom are just our 10-year historical. The top number is our budget. The bottom numbers are actual expenditures. So you can see year over year, just highlighting that example, that it really is a good practice to get in the habit of not expending your entire budget. And what that does is that does help you to build your fund balance and reserves. And then, of course, 99% of the world doesn't pay attention to the school budget at all until you get to this time of year when they have to go vote on it, and there may or may not be something controversial within your budget. Our budget this year, proposed budget, is $130,285,026. And in New York State, they break down your budget into 3 parts. This is called the 3-part budget. There's a program, a capital, and an administration. Program budget, think of that as being anything that's directly related to a child in a school. So any cost in the program budget is directly associated with students and learning. Your capital costs are anything that are associated with your facilities, maintenance projects that might be going on. You got to pay the bands and bonds on. Your custodians, your grounds, all of that is in your capital. And administration is anything that it costs to operate the school district. So that would be superintendent's office expenses, central office expenses, Board of Education expenses, legal fees, publications and newspapers, basically anything it would take to operate the district is your administration costs. This is just a quick breakdown of how our budget looks. If you look by different codes within the budget, clearly there's not a whole lot to talk about here other than this highlights that the vast majority of our budget is directly related to personnel. Payroll and benefits, they make up almost 70% of the budget, and that's pretty much common for any school district you see. The other 2 large numbers you have on here, one of the big ones this year is our BOCES codes, 490 codes. We are increasing our contributions to BOCES, or our partnerships with BOCES, quite a bit in the coming year. BOCES has had some, the right word I'll say is they've been very collaborative with us to develop programs for our students that we feel are going to benefit what is really good for our kids. And as a result, we're contributing more money to BOCES because they're working with us to develop the things that we need versus this is what we have to offer. you want to buy into it or not. So I thank our BOCES administration for working with us on that. But a large portion of that increase over year is BOCES. And our community schools program, if you don't know much about that, that's a program that started in Rome, was born in Rome. They've expanded so much to so many other school districts that now we can get them through BOCES. So now we pay BOCES to operate that program, and in turn, most money we send to BOCES, we get back the following year as a revenue item from state aid. So that's a huge benefit for us to see community schools grow and get the BOCES. So about 13% of our budget is BOCES. Everything else is pretty inconsequential. Contractual codes, $12 million. Again, contracts that the district has in one way, shape, or form. That could be the largest portion of that is our transportation services. Transportation alone is about 7 to 8 million of that 12 million in one large chunk. The rest of those contracts could be service contracts for our mechanical equipment at our buildings. If something goes wrong, or you bring in and fix it. It could be service contracts or contracts you have with your banks, your credit card companies to be able to use their credit cards, whatever it might be. Contractual is what it sounds like, contractual. Brief historical summary. This has been in previous presentations, so I won't hit it. If you want to do some homework, you can see kind of how next year's proposed budget stacks up with this year's current operational budget and last year's budget. The differences you can see percentage-wise, a pretty big increase in equipment, but dollar-wise, not a whole lot of a large increase there. You also have a large increase. You'll see the BOCES codes there I mentioned earlier, and then you see some decreases overall throughout. But in general, we're looking at about a 6% increase year over year of proposed expenditure budget. In New York State, school districts are the only public agency required to balance their budget. No municipality, no government agency is required to show you a revenue stream that says, here's how we're going to get to that 130 million. School districts are required by law to do that. So the next part of the presentation is simply, we're asking the community to allow us to authorize us to have access to $130 million. Here's the revenue that we are showing to be able to make that happen. Again, our major sources are the four that you see on here: state aid, property taxes, fund balance, and other would be your federal funds. Our pilot agreements in Rome equate to about 1% of our revenues. The only thing different here than normal years, state aid is up quite significantly, and fund balance, use of fund balance to balance the budget. Come on, have a seat. You can watch it all on YouTube. Give me my first viewer tomorrow. I'll send it directly to you. The appropriated fund balance to balance the budget is down significantly this year. Normally that number ranges between 6 and 9% to balance the budget, and this year we've got that down to 2. Here we go, our estimated revenues. So what you see here is 2021 are our actual revenues. 2022 are our projected revenues. That's because the fiscal year for the school district doesn't close until the end of July. So we are a few months away from knowing what our actual revenues for this current year will be. So right now we're showing projections for the year and then our estimates for next year. Nothing really different than what we've talked about here. If you're looking at some things that seem a little bit wacky, you'll see a large increase in foundation aid. That's the main chunk of state aid. A large increase in reimbursable other state aids. That is your BOCES expenses, and your transportation expenses draw what's a form of transportation aid. Last year, we used more busing than we used in 1920 because we had so many months of no school from March of 2020 on. So we had significant increases in both BOCES expenses last year and transportation, which drew in more reimbursable aid. The federal revenue being down $6 million, that's a direct reflection of federal funds that came in as a result of COVID. On any given year, generally speaking, our federal funding is right around that $350,000, or I'm sorry, yeah, $350,000 mark. 2021 and 21-22 are very large numbers for federal funding. Normally, we don't have much federal funding at all. Tax levy. So as a part of the revenue source for next year, the district is proposing a 2.50% increase in the tax levy, a difference of $891,299 over this year's actual property tax levy. Similar to the budget being a spending cap on what the district is allowed to expend if necessary, the voter approved tax levy is the maximum amount that the district may collect if it's determined necessary. This is very important for most communities to understand. Not a lot of districts do this, but Rome has been doing it. And I really thank our Board of Education for allowing me to implement this model here in Rome, because not many people do it. If our revenues come in July and August being worse than what we predict, we may need 2.5% of an increase in the tax levy. If they come in better, which we usually expect them to do, the Board of Education every August is the legal mechanism to actually adopt the tax levy. So what I do every August is I say, look, we finished our books. We came in under over revenue, under budget. Great, good job, business department. Great job, teachers. Good job, administration. We've saved some money. Let's lower the tax levy when we approve it in August. And if you look back over previous years, the voter approved tax levy is higher than the board authorized tax levy in August. So if you look back, definitely this year we did it last August. And I think we did it 2 years prior to that, and maybe the year before that. So I'd say at least 2 of the last 3, maybe 3 of the last 4, we follow this model. I put that out there because not a lot of communities do that, but it's important for the community to understand. At this point in time, we don't know our total revenue. We would need 2.5% if those numbers don't come in tremendously good. We may not need it though if things go the way that we plan on them going. But it's important to know what the voters approve and what the board approves are not always the same thing. This number is the maximum that it could be, and we work to make sure that it winds up being less. If the tax rate is 2.5% increase over last year, this is what it would look like in each of the 5 municipalities for your assessed tax rates. You can see the slight increases. Some municipalities change different than others. This is a direct result of assessment values and equalization rate. Equalization rate is a fancy state word for ensuring that no municipality is responsible for any single portion of the school tax bill of a greater amount than any other municipality. The state finds a way to balance out the different assessment rates of the municipalities. This just highlights that same thing. This is at the tax rate of 2.5% increase. This is what the impact would be on a home in Rome, in the city of Rome, with 3 different assessed values of 50,000, 100,000, 150,000. Just for illustration purposes, if you had an assessed value of $100,000 on your property, a 2.5% tax increase would amount to a $105 difference per year on your tax bill. So just less than $10 a month. If you really want to learn about tax rates, have at it. This slide's on our website. You can go to some of these websites to look at it, but essentially what impacts your tax rate are state and federal aids. So if the state aid comes in way greater than we anticipate, it could lower your tax rate because we won't use much money in taxes to be able to operate the district. Federal aid could be the same thing. We saw that with COVID. With the federal aid that came in for COVID, the board that year adopted a 0% tax increase for the community because we knew we were going to be able to get some federal money to offset that loss. Other things that affect your tax rate that the district does not control is the assessed value of your property. If that changes, we have no control over that. The equalization rates, as I mentioned, they're set by the state of New York, and then any change in STAR exemptions also set by the state of New York could impact your tax rate, your tax bill, tax rate for the school district. But again, all things that we don't control. And again, if you really want to have a future as a school business official someday, start with those websites. Writing down here by the math. This kind of shows you from the top level down how we got to a balanced budget. Again, proposed number $130,285,026. Our estimated revenues just over $124 million. That leaves us with a gap of $6,093,077. And we closed that deficit by increasing the local share by $891,299. That's at 2.5%. allocating about 680,000 reserves, and then allocating about 4.5 million of our fund balance to get to a current deficit level of 0. One thing that's important to note, it's not in this presentation, but it's in previous presentations. If you want to go back and look, normally at this time, when we're done allocating our fund balance, that number is usually in the $8 to $9 million range of allocated fund balance. And usually it leaves us with a projected fund balance of about 2 to 3 million left in the bank. This year allocating 4.5 million, we are still projecting about 8 to 8.5 in fund balance remaining. And that's if we use that 4.5 million, which usually we will not use that entire amount, because as I mentioned at the very beginning, you never want to expend the entire approved budget. That would be extremely poor management. New slide. This is a legal requirement, the contingency budget. If the budget is voted down, the contingency budget for the district for next year would be $129,393,728. One of the most misunderstood pieces about a contingency budget is that if your budget gets voted down, you automatically revert back to the previous year's budget. And that's just not true. There's a calculation that creates that 129 figure, but essentially a contingency budget only funds your salaries for your teachers and those items that the board determines as an ordinary contingent expense. And it lists here what those things might be. Now, it seems pretty broad, right? But if you end up on a contingency budget, the state's going to be pretty much looking at you with a fine-tooth comb to make sure you're following these. It's important to understand that expenditures that do not constitute a necessary expense would be new equipment, the public use of facilities. So if you're on a contingency budget, the public is not allowed to use your facilities for any reason. Non-essential maintenance, which I think most maintenance should be considered essential because the purpose of doing it is so you don't need to fix something later. Capital expenditures and consultant services would all be things that don't fall into that expenditure bucket if we're on a contingency budget. How you get to contingency, there's two ways. The first and most common way is 2 unsuccessful public budget votes. The second way could be after 1 unsuccessful budget vote. I almost read that wrong. After 1 unsuccessful budget vote, it could be directly enacted by the Board of Education. So if the budget is defeated, the board could adopt to immediately go to contingency as opposed to going back to the public and saying, let's vote on this again. If the budget's defeated and you elect to do a second public vote, one of 2 things could happen. The district could put the same exact budget out for the same exact vote and hope for a better result, or they can go back to the drawing board, make some changes, make some adjustments. Some districts have had their budgets voted down because the community wanted them to be bigger. So their second vote was for a dollar amount that was more than what they originally did. Highly unlikely, but anything can happen if the budget gets defeated. When you go vote on May 17th, here are our locations, 10 wards. These are the same as they were in March for the referendum vote, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you did not vote in March for the referendum, the only location that is different this year from previous years is the voting locations for Staley that were the 1st and 2nd ward. They are now here at Bell Road, 49 Bell Road, if you're voting in that catchment area. Otherwise, everything remains the same as it was. When you go to the polls, you have a few things that you have to do. First, yes or no on $130 million proposed budget, your choice. But the first proposition is yes or no on the expenditure budget of the district. The second thing to vote on is the Board of Education seats. We currently have 4 seats available. 3 of them are 3-year terms. 1 of them is for a remaining 2-year term that is created by a resignation. We have a total of 8 candidates running for those 4 seats. The top 3 vote getters will get the 3-year terms that start on July 1. The 4th place vote getter will receive the 2-year term that will take effect immediately following the election. They'll finish out the rest of this year and then continue on through July. That's per New York State education law. That's not something that anybody wants to have to go through, unfortunately, but it's something that we have to look at. If you're interested for more information about our 8 candidates, you can find them on this link. This is on our website, but on the finance budget portion of our website, we do have bios. The nightly news, who is our student news broadcast that RFA will be doing a special on each of the 8 candidates. I think you're all in the room. I talked to Elise earlier, but please, if you haven't spoken with Carl about setting up an interview time, please do that so the kids can get that together and get it out. So, and I believe Monday night, the NAACP has a Meet the Candidates forum, 7 p.m. at Stroud Middle School. If anything comes up else next week, we will certainly broadcast that and get that information out. Vote on the expenditure budget. Did I break it? Nope. Vote on your board candidates. And the third proposition you'll see is for the establishment of a new capital reserve. You may be saying we already have a capital reserve. That is correct. New York State law says you can have a capital reserve. You can set the maximum funding limit. Once you start using it though, you can't put money back into it. So it's not like a bank account where you can make a deposit and then you can withdraw money and put more money back into it. Once you establish it, once you fund it and you start spending it, you can't use it to put more money back in. You have to start a new one to start saving. So this proposition is merely to open up another capital reserve so we can start saving money for future projects. We don't plan on funding it at this time. We simply are asking the community to allow us to open the account. So in future years, maybe in August, when we finish seeing what our revenues are, so the budget looks, we might ask the board to use some of the remaining funds from the year to put into the capital reserve, whatever that might be. But the purpose of the meeting is what I just mentioned. Bless you, Paul. You can have as many capital reserves as you want, but once you start expending the funds, you can't replenish them. So that's the third proposition that we ask you to vote. This is a yes or no. So you got a yes or no, you get to pick some peoples, and then you get another yes or no. And with that, I say thank you, and we'll entertain any questions that anybody may have.
You did.
See, these guys, these people know, they've been through like 3 of them. I took a lot of slides down in the budget hearing, but I've got new slides that I'm adding next year already, just so you know. You're right, it'll be about 3.5 minutes long. All right, good. So we get a little bit of a break till 7, right?
Yes, we're waiting for John to come back.
Any questions in the public? All right. Thank you all. We can take a brief break until 7 o'clock.
Johnson back, we can start, right?
Just back.
Yeah, their event ends just before 7.
Okay.